Thanks everybody for coming to the last lecture of 2010. Thank you very much. It is always an honor to be here doing this work, and even more pleasure when I get to sit and watch and learn. And in this case, I'm not likely to learn very much per se, but it's always good to hear other people's perspective of the work that I've done. And January, we're coming up to the 15th anniversary of the Cannabis Buyers Club of Canada. And there are still some people around from the very earliest days, 15 years ago. And I'm going to look forward to hearing Gail's talk today, but it is in some sense the second half of our history. Something came to me on the weekend about our sort of, in a sense, historical importance. And sometimes I like to brag a lot, but other times I could probably go further. When I started the Cannabis Buyers Club 15 years ago, I lived in a van, I got a pager and a pamphlet. I didn't really have my act together, you could say, but I was bold enough and crazy enough to get a pager and a pamphlet under the premise that, of course, I'm going to get busted any number of times for doing so. The only other club in the world at that time, to my knowledge, was the Cannabis Buyers Club in San Francisco that Dennis Perron had started, although many clubs did start up soon after. My understanding is that the Cannabis Buyers Club that we have in Victoria is not only the second oldest in the world to Dennis Perron's club, or I should say it's not only the oldest in Canada, but it is the second ever, to my knowledge, that really, well, there may have been other ones running. So the second in North America that may have started up, but more importantly, I think we can make the very strong claim now that we are the oldest dispensary in the world, not just in Canada. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, we've survived a lot of trauma, and Gail has been one of those that have helped me through thick and thin. And today she's going to share her story on our work at the club. An interesting one that is. So thank you very much, Sally.
Thanks very much for coming today. As Ted said, the club was started in 1996, and he's put on other lectures about the history, so I'm not going to go into any of that. I joined the club in the year 2003, so that's where I'm going to just jump in. I had come to Victoria because I had had to leave my home, and I'd heard that the compassion clubs in Victoria had been busted, and to me that was unacceptable, that there was people actually helping sick people and still being arrested for doing such a thing. So I set out right away, and actually because of this magazine here, I found this magazine wandering around town. I was homeless and cut off of my disability and not in very good shape, and so I was told that one of the clubs, I could get this magazine there. So I went out and tried to find the clubs, and I found the other club first and knocked on their door and saw everybody inside, and they wouldn't answer the door. So I went back, I left and started wandering around and found the Cannabis Buyers Club, and they told me what I needed to become a member, and I didn't have any of my paperwork because I just left home with nothing. And so a couple of days later I went back to the other club and knocked on the door again, and this time they opened the door and asked me what I wanted, and I said, I heard I can get this magazine here, and that you help people with medical cannabis. Well, they gave me a magazine and wouldn't answer any questions about medical cannabis, so I went on my way again and went back to the Cannabis Buyers Club. where one of the other fellows was at work, and he had enough time to listen to the problems that I was having. And he got on the telephone to my doctor and explained the situation to my doctor and asked him to fax some pertinent medical records over to the club for him, and I was a member within a couple of hours. It was
good processing time.
Hey?
So that's a good processing time.
Yeah, it was just phenomenal
Business days
because
or some shit like that.
yeah, it was well, it was sorry, it was phenomenal for me because, as I said, I had just actually been left home for almost a year by then, and I was commuting back and forth to Dawson Creek, and because that's where my sons were, and so it was really the first help of any form that I had received in that year. So it was really phenomenal, and that's one of the main things that I want to talk about, if I can, about the club today. Because I used to supply cannabis. It's how I raised my kids. It's how I raised myself to people that I knew. And mostly it was my friends, and I only sold enough to keep myself going and what I needed. And you know, you get to meet a lot of interesting people, and that's where the club takes a monumental leap. We don't just supply cannabis to people for medicine. It's a real social, interactive network. We have people help me. They went out of their way to help me. And we have a little room in the called the box. And every day people are in there helping each other. It's just one of the most amazing things that I get to witness every day. Sorry, I had no idea this would happen. The club has really impacted my life the last 7 years. I started out just volunteering. I saw they were in a lot of trouble. Ted was never there. He wasn't allowed in the club at the time because of all of the raids that they sustained. He had like a court order. He wasn't allowed on the premises. So you'd get phone calls. We'd have to run up the street for supply and whatnot. And there wasn't really much of anything being done. So the first thing that I basically started doing was volunteering. And I started making things like this out of just construction paper, because we relied on things that people brought to us, or I'd go to St. Vincent's and buy a whole bundle of felt pens for $1 because the club was so far in debt they couldn't even have felt pens and stuff like that. So that was one of the first things that we started, was the working group. And that was fun. And out of that, one of the main things that came out of that was this little thing right here. This is our very first cannabis digest, and it's all of 4 pages. Sheet folded in half, and we were very, very proud of it. I've been writing for the digest ever since the very first one. And it's one of the things that I'm most proud of, because to me, there's no point in learning things if you can't go out there and share it with other people. And that's one of the things that the club has been so important, is I've been able to share my knowledge that I'd had already with so many people, and was encouraged just to learn more. That people started to get to know me, and they started to hear my story. I healed myself of hepatitis C with the use of herbs, and to me cannabis is just another herb. I use dandelions and milk thistle and vitamin C and cannabis, and ingesting cannabis to heal myself of hepatitis C when the doctors told me to go home and die. I've got 15 years up now on what they gave me to live because of my use of herbs. So this little digest was really important to me because it encouraged me to learn more, for one, and it gave me an avenue of sharing what I had learned. We quickly grew up into quite a few pages. And now in our 5th year, just starting our 5th year, we're a real newspaper. This was our very first one. Now they are all online too, as well. So if you don't like wasting paper and whatnot, and all of the back issues are online too. There's the newest one, and this is the first one with coloring contest. And you can just take a picture, you don't have to send in the page to pass these ones around. So in these digests, as I develop new products for people, they come to me with more specific problems than maybe when I first started, we only had I think about 8 products, I think. We had a massage oil and a salve and like 6 different kinds of the regular cookies and the Buddha balls and the Rhinols, which are all really wonderful, wonderful medicines. And the Rhinol are still one of the first things that I recommend to people to try that come into the club, especially those who've never used cannabis before, and especially eating it. But now we have 28 or 29 alternative products that I've been encouraged and helped to develop. So we have a whole product guide. And as I develop the new products, an expanded article is put into the digest. So I not only get to make medicine for people, but I get to help teach them how to make it themselves in their own home. It's been absolutely wonderful. I used to like writing when I was in high school, but I never dreamed that I'd actually become a published author, because back to this little beautiful magazine that unfortunately isn't in print anymore, Cannabis Health. It's had
When did they go out of production?
one article. Pardon?
When did they go out of production?
Well, that's good trivia.
That's really good trivia. I can't give out any hints. Here. It's got an article that Dan wrote about the cannabis, the Buyers Club. This one here was in 2003. It has an article written about hempology in it, and I can't remember what year it was. 2006. This one here was held in 2006. Has an extensive article about our alternative products that I wrote. It was the first major thing that we've had published other than our own magazine. So I was really proud about that. I sweat for about 6 months working on it. One of the other things that I'm particularly proud about the club is our involvement with International Medical Marijuana Day. We celebrate every November 15th. We just had our annual cookie giveaway, which is all fun and it's all fun. It's all yeah, it's all fun. But what we didn't have then is what I just went to go pick up today. And that's our proclamation from the city. And it changes a little bit every year, and this proclamation is really important to me because it holds up what we've been told in court. people